let's talk about one of my favorite drawings, the section drawing. And we're going to start with building sections this time around, and we'll get to detail sections and wall sections later on. But basically, when you do building sections in Revit, this is the time when you start seeing that some of your model components are not going to be fully effective, that you're basically going to have to start relying on detail lines and filled regions and some other monkey business in order to kind of make the drawings appear as they should, rather than kind of as they're modeled. Often Revit just isn't going to model every bit and piece of a project. So, and a prime example here is our pool in this project. Many of you have noticed, to great consternation, that the pool doesn't cut the floor. Okay, and you can see here, actually, before I get to the pool, that one thing I have done is made sure that the graphics match my floor plan, which is to say, my new walls are solid and white, my existing walls are solid and black. And you can do it the other way around, and in some ways I feel that the other way might be easier to read, but this is the way I learned how to do it. You should match that floor plan. Very important. Now, how do you make the pool show up as looking correctly? Basically, you use that filled region that we learned about earlier. Okay, so go to Annotate, Region. Okay. And I have created a filled region that is solid white, which is handy. Okay. And what you'll do is you basically draw it with lines. I'm going to use wide lines for the outer portion here. And basically, I want this to look like this pool here. Okay. So I can actually probably get away with using the Select tool. Maybe, oh, no, maybe. Okay. Sometimes you just can't get that Select tool. Select. Nope. Anyway, so we'll have to just kind of manually draw in some of these lines here. It's probably to do with the Revit component. And one thing that's really important is, let's see how big are these sections here. It's a foot, which is probably about right if you're considering the thickness of the pool construction and also the insulation that is almost certainly there. Okay, so I'll just trim this guy up. And what's nice about doing it this way is if you wanted to add a hatch pattern to the pool to have it look concrete, for example, I might even have a concrete one. Maybe use gypsum wallboard. It'll show up looking like that. Okay, so it will mask out anything behind it. So that's the pool cut part. Although I guess in this part, probably we actually want to fill it with black. Okay, there we go. That looks very nice. Now, the other thing that we want to do is get rid of the white part. Okay, and the way that you do that is the same way. You do a filled region, make sure that it is solid white, and that one I can just get away with a rectangle. This time I'm going to use thin lines, because we do see the top of the pool, we just don't want to see the edges. And you might say, well, wait, isn't there like a drain? Remember some of the pools we saw had a drain? That's where your friend, the detail line, comes in handy. Again, you can just draw some thin lines, and you can even draw it if you knew how far down the line was supposed to be. Oops, wrong direction. Line, 4 inches. If you knew how far down it would be, you could draw with an offset automatically. So there's my line, and then I'll come back in and I'll even draw another one that is 2 inches below that. I could use offset, of course, also. And there you go. So you might say, but that's not going to show up in my perspective drawing. That's okay. All right. The big thing is it should show correct. So anyway, that's a real common thing. Other things you might want to draw in is detail lines in this section are things like wall base. Okay. you should have a wall base. You can absolutely put it in by editing the wall type. That is how you can make the wall base show up, is with those detail lines. Now, other things that you're going to want to clean up are things like this area over here. We don't really want to show any of that existing stuff. So I'm going to turn my crop region and back on, display it. Okay. And I can use that crop region to crop away the stuff that I don't use. You might say, these things keep moving with the level indicators keep moving with the region there. You can just slide them out a little bit, okay, so that you can read them. It is important to be able to read your notes. And then these two, I don't think it's worth showing those, so I'm going to hide them. Okay, you should hide those in both your sections. And obviously you don't want to see your crop region. However, it is common to draw in a heavy dashed line that indicates the limit of work. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I'll show you how to, I believe, no, I don't think I created one. What you can do is create a custom line type. And remember, we did this before, went to Manage, Additional Settings. I'm not going to, kind of go over this one again in great detail. Just leave it to be that a heavy line type, and I'll just call it limit of work. And I actually have seen this line type before, and I've seen a limit of work layer in AutoCAD. So this is definitely a common thing. And you'll want to use an extremely heavy line type. I actually don't know how heavy that line is. And we'll probably want to use like a dashed line. Let's see how those guys come in. Apply. Okay. And now when you annotate using that detail line, hopefully I remembered to save it. What did I call it? Limit of work. Okay. You should be able to come in and draw that nice heavy line. Oops, except if you draw it outside of the crop region, then it won't show up. You have to draw it inside the crop region. Whoops. Little rookie mistake there, huh? So anyway, this dashed heavy line typically goes beyond the bottom and top ever so slightly. And then usually you put in a piece of text that says, I'll just draw it in here, limit of work. Whoops, work. I have always seen it all caps, and I've always seen it as bigger text than the other text. So this means you may want to find a larger text. I think the text sizes in this are a little funky. She has two that, or I have two that say 330 seconds. I don't think I labeled these properly. If you want to change the font, and I would strongly recommend that you do that just to make it your own, you can choose Edit Type, and we can find out exactly the size of this text. It's 1/8 inch, even though it says 330 seconds, so I'm just going to call this 1/8 of an inch. As long as we're here, might as well fix. Okay, so anyway, and then you put that in there, and interesting enough, it's always vertical. Well, it's not always vertical, but I've seen it vertical a lot. I think it's just a quirky draftsman's choice there. And then try to get that limit of work line as close to the edge as you can. And there you go. And that, by the way, should show up in plan also. I'm going to copy the text and the line here, Control C, and then go to my floor plan view. And I think a lot of you actually could do this as well. In your main floor plan, make sure, I'm going to show my crop region, make sure you do not show all this stuff up here above our project and off to the left. We don't need to see all that stuff. Stop it. Stop it right there before you get to the corridor, or just into the corridor. And what I will do, I'm going to paste in my limit of work here, drag it over. Farther. And again, try to get it as close to that edge as you can. Revit, by the way, when you nudge things using the arrow key, it nudges a percentage zoom of your screen. So you will be, you can nudge less or more depending on how zoomed in you are, zoomed out or zoned out or whatever it is that's going on there. All right, and I would do this for both sides. So I'll just create another one of these guys over here. And every time you do stuff like this, adding in lines, make sure you come back and you kind of clean up the text. And I'm going to not copy that text right now. But make sure that you clean things up by nudging the text. And if you have to, nudge the detail circles, room names, all that sort of stuff. Nothing should overlap. Oh, look at that terrible spelling. What is that? So anyway, this guy here, grab. There you go. So limit of work, very important. Let's go back to the section. I forget which one I was on. Oh, this one. So obviously, I only need this horizontally because I don't see the other part of the project. Now, other things that you'll want to do, this is the part where, as in plan, you'll want to identify where you're going to be drawing some kind of detail. And doing that by adding your callout. Remember the callouts that we added? Now, in this case, I'm pretty sure you're all going to have two details. You're going to have the mezzanine guardrail. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a detail around that. And you're also going to have a detail at the pool edge. Okay, that's pretty much de rigueur. All right. And let me just grab this guy. And as you can see, I can't read that detail head. I should move it. Same with this one. Move it so that they are legible. All right. One of the other things you'll want to do is dimension vertical components. All right. We're not going to dimension every single bit and piece, but the biggest thing that you want to dimension in this case is anything that that it does have a critical height to it. Things like signage, and then anything like our mezzanine, which has kind of a general thickness to it that we need to identify. We will detail this later on in a wall section. Okay, and so when you go to your dimension tool, I'm just going to dimension the height of this mezzanine construction. Again, we haven't figured it out exactly. We're just kind of indicating roughly how high it is. If there were any signs or other things hanging on the wall, I would indicate those. And I also want to indicate the pool depth. And this would probably be a good time to start thinking about how deep is a lap pool. That you need to do here, just dimensioning vertical elements, so no horizontal pieces. You may want to dimension this railing, but again, I know I'm going to do a detail of that. That's pretty much a given. So really, let's save that dimension for later on. You do want to have notes that indicate all major kind of finishes, all major construction elements. So for example, I would have, and I'm not going to do every single one of these, but I might have a note that points at the existing HVAC system, and it says something like existing HVAC system to remain. And then I usually indicate the finish that I want to have happen if something is going to happen there, and I will write paint. Okay, I haven't come up with a paint scheme yet, but often you'll see it will say paint P1, P2, P3. Okay, in fact, maybe this is a good time to come up with a scheme for painting. So I'll actually put that in now. Paint P1. It's a little, whoops, P exclamation point, P1. Okay. Same down here. I'm going to just select this note, use my control drag to make a copy. Okay. In fact, I'll make a couple of copies just because I know I'm going to have several notes. Okay. And here I might say existing structure, paint P2, okay? You might say, how do they know what P2 is? I'm going to tell them, right? I'm going to have a schedule for painting, okay? You know, here for this wall, you might say just P3, okay, for the entire wall. You don't really need to identify the construction type. Usually when I'm doing a wall or something like that, I will kind of do this, I don't know, octopus arm or whatever you want to call it, yoga pose, I suppose, is what people would say now, to indicate the entire wall, okay? And this one, again, I may not want to be too detailed, you know, pool membrane, membrane, okay. And I might just leave it at that. Generic is really best. And if you have, I posted a reading on Canvas that is on sections, kind of a selected thing on sections and elevations. It's pretty short. It's from that same book, and it has a great checklist for elevations, which I would strongly recommend you take a look at, elevations and sections. And one of the things it mentions is being as generic as possible. Okay, so even this railing, you know, I'm going to point at the railing. At this point, do I want to say glass and metal railing? I think leaving it at just railing at this point is probably the best thing to do. I could say glass and metal, of course. And here, same thing. I could say gypsum or a concrete block wall or CMU wall, concrete masonry unit wall. But I think I'm just going to say P4 and leave it at that. That just indicates that it's painted. Okay, there will be a schedule at some later point. Now, any of these other random elements that are in your project, whatever they might be, if it's you know, handicap lift, if it is a movable seating, collapsible seating, all that kind of stuff, you'll again just want to indicate it with notes. So each of these are going to have probably at least a half dozen notes. Don't, you know, indicate doorknob, etc., etc. But absolutely anything that is not entirely clear. Major elements, you know, the pool, major walls, railings, and you'll also again want to indicate the finishes. All right. Now that's section drawings, and both should be the same. What about interior elevations? Now let's go and we'll create some interior elevations. Plan was the wrong scale. By the way, the scale of your plans should be 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. We're now at the stage where we need to show more detail. Anyway, look at your section direction, the direction of your section, and what you'll want to do is just make sure that when you draw your interior elevations, first of all, you want to draw the ones that are not drawn in section, right? And you all hopefully remember how to draw interior elevations. Okay, you go to elevation, make sure it says interior elevation, and when you place the symbol, it automatically points at the correct wall, right? And what I like to do is see if I can grab that elevation. First of all, this just makes sure that the limits are correct of the elevation. And then come in here and see if I can grab the center one. I'm tapping tab, by the way. I'm sure you know that little trick to activate the other section. So now I have these two sections. Oh, and you might be wondering why I don't have the view names there. I turn them off. You have to go to Edit Type, and where it says half-inch circle, I believe this is where you can come in and see how there's one that says filled arrow or something like that. You want the one that does not say put in the view name. Okay, if that's not in there, by the way, you'll want to go and look for the elevation tag half circle. You want to load that in. I believe that's the trick there. So go to, let's see if we can do that. Insert, load family. It's an annotation. Elevation mark. I think this might be it, or textural. I think that might be it. Elevation, grid head circle. It's one of these guys here. Okay. All right, there you go, little aside. So let's take a look at these interior elevations. I always get annoyed with Revit, and I get annoyed with Revit a lot when I do interior elevations because it doesn't do them very well. Now, first of all, now is the time to really start doing the non-lazy thing, which is renaming your elevations so that you can recognize what they are. Demolition, elevation, and I believe this was the north elevation. Okay, and then these two elevations. Whoops. Just rename. Oh, I guess that's the demo north elevation. Whoopsie daisy. All right. Here, we'll copy that name. Copy it. And this is the north elevation. And then, which one was it? That's the. Oh, yeah, here we go. That's the one. We'll rename that guy. So keep track of all these things because what was the other one? I think it was the east elevation, right? Let's try that. And of course, I always screw these things up, but you'll want to try and do a good job. Nothing worse than having the wrong elevation in there. So anyway, this is what you usually get when you deal with Revit, which is this just lame elevation. I don't know why Revit just can't do it correctly. And I would absolutely, let's see, here we go. Stretch this out a little bit. Oh, there's the wall. Okay. Make sure that it is a true elevation, right? Do not show wall thickness, okay? And obviously in Revit, this is easy enough. Now, the trick is that you do actually want to show the pool, okay? So interior elevations, they trace the perimeter of the solid construction of the room. In this case, the solid construction includes the pool, at least that's the way I like to draw them. So this is where you have to edit the crop region. Maybe you remember this from CAD or not. You choose that, and now you can actually modify this line. And again, like we did when we did the filled region in the section to change the shape of the pool, we can do it here as well. So you just come in, you draw a line, and of course this is where you can make up for things. For instance, I do not want to have steps heading into the pool. Okay, then I'll come back. And I just want it to go horizontally to the far end. There we go. Get rid of that extra line and clean it up. Okay. And I think I got that right. Okay. There we go. I think that's right. Now you might say, hey, two things are wrong with this. First of all, I'm seeing all this junk here. So we fix that the same way we did it before. You do a filled region. Okay, so annotate region. Okay, filled region solid white. And in this case, it actually doesn't really matter what lines we use, but because we're going to override some of these lines. But you draw that in like we did before. Okay, so it covers up the pool. Now, the last thing you'll want to do is when you do interior elevations, this perimeter line of the elevation needs to be a dark line. Okay, that's the crop region. There's really only one way that I know how to do that, and that is right-click on the crop region and choose Override Graphics in View by Element. Okay, everybody follow that? And then just make the line weight really heavy, 5, 6, 7. Okay, apply. Here, I'll make it extra dark so you can see it. Whoa, that's really dark. That may be actually too dark. All right, but you do want to exaggerate that, especially I really do find in these elevations where there's a lot of detail, it can be quite confusing. So this is the same other things that you want to do here that you want to do in section view, which is clean up things that you don't want to see, and then annotate and dimension things that you only see in elevation. Now, I like to hide these guys. I'm going to hide the category. And same with the section marks. You do not show those in interior elevations. So hide and view category. Okay. If there's anything else, scale figures, movable furniture is one that I usually hide. I'm going to leave it on here because Some of these things I'm not actually sure I know if they're on furniture. And if you're feeling particularly OCD, what you can do is you can go to the view templates, and you can create a template from the current view, and I'll just call it Condocs interior elevation. Use my code speak there. And what's nice is now I have that view. Look how nice that interior elevation is. And I would note it up. I don't really see anything on this particular view that I would dimension. I was thinking of putting some signage here, or possibly a screen or a scoreboard. If I had those elements, I would absolutely dimension their vertical component. They're dimensioned horizontally in plan. Okay, so let's go to the other elevation, and we can tweak it. Okay, right? Obviously, we want to fix it so that we see the entire length of the space. Like we did before. Drop this down, drop this up. I would want to do that whole fandango where I trace the pool. Here, you absolutely will want to change it so that it recognizes the mezzanine, and you can kind of do that quickly-ish by using the select tool. I'm just going to draw a line through it to save time on the video. Anyway, the other thing is that you will want to draw this down to the bottom here, because this is a wall. So it's actually technically another room. So it wants to be not drawn on this on this interior elevation. There we go. Okay, so I'll just click checkbox. So that's more or less what your section plane, your perimeter of your interior elevation would look like if you drew in all the stands and the pool. And again, you'd override it, and you'd use that view template. And this is where you can save yourself a little bit of time. Go to view template, apply view template to a current view, and then just choose the one that you have, and like magic, those other things will disappear. All right, so that is basically how you put together the interior elevations. Now, there is one last little piece to this fun interior elevation and section thing, which is, let me go to my main floor plan. When you do these sections, interior elevations, there are certain elevations which are hidden. For example, we never see this front wall here right at the reception area. So you're going to want to put in an itty-bitty little teeny-tiny interior elevation. But that interior elevation doesn't want to be the whole room. It just wants to be this front wall. Okay, see how I have changed the length of that interior elevation, the kind of limits of it, so that it just shows that room. And of course, as usual, Revit mucks it up. But you can see you would draw this up until wherever you put the ceiling. Okay, and same operation, put notes. Some people will drag this out a little bit and put in a cut line here. Okay, it's entirely up to you. Okay, you can go and you can insert a cut line. Let's see, I believe that's also under annotations somewhere. Maybe architectural. Nope. Okay, well, I'll have to post one to Canvas. I have one somewhere you can use a cut line. Anyway, so what I'd like you to do is find all the hidden elevations, and I know they're hidden, so they're hard to find. That's a joke. But the one that I'm sure you all have is the one that I have, since we're all doing the same plan. Right here, this front little space, this tiny little space here, and then, interestingly enough, these little tiny back walls. Okay, and again, you might say, well, why do we even have to show those? Well, you know, for instance, there may be signage there, there may be a board there, there may be a defibrillator there, there could be any sort of thing in that area. You absolutely will want to elevate those. I think in my project that's all I've got. Those of you that have different sorts of projects, slightly different configurations, you'll want to look for those elevations. All right.